So greetings, everyone. I'm Stephen Donaco, the founder of Social Chrysalis, and thank you for joining us for this Social Chrysalis Roundtable titled Mindfulness, Sound Healing, and Science Come Together as One. And it is my pleasure and honor to have with me Ian Morris, who is founder of Listening to Smile. It's a unique sound healing company that creates music that heals, utilizing sacred frequencies and doing its work in a way that contributes to a more beautiful world. Listening to Smile's goal is to support emotional and physical wellness, and at the same time offer an alternative model for how music is produced, distributed, and sold, one that is rooted in valuing the creative process and valuing one another. In the last year, Listening to Smile has worked with Davenport University, Carnegie Mellon University, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and celebrity chef Pete Evans, as well as numerous healing practitioners, yoga studios, and the like. Now, this event tonight also serves to announce a partnership between Listening to Smile and Social Chrysalis, by which you can save 40% on your purchases of sound healing music and support the evolutionary mission of Social Chrysalis. So more details on that in a bit. But in the meantime, Ian Morris, welcome to this Social Chrysalis Roundtable. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so what I want to start with is your story, because this is something that this this company, but not just this company, but this movement, this music that you produce, is really deeply based on your own transformative experience of healing. And can you just give us take a few minutes to explain like how this all evolved for you and what your experience was and how it blossomed into what you're doing today?
Yeah, for sure. I'll try to condense it, but
Yeah.
basically, I my whole life I played sports. From t-ball, I was a baseball player all the way up to high school. I had scouts that were looking at me and talking to me at games, and was really excited about college and even talks of playing professionally as a baseball player. I was a pitcher. I could hit home runs and pitch. Had a good fastball and some other pitches, and so it was something that was a part of my life for most of my life. And when I was 17, 18 years old, I was running around the bases at a game and just fell over, just passed out. And when I went to the hospital, they were saying that it was mitral valve prolapse and a heart arrhythmia. And when that happened, all the scouts were gone, no, and didn't, that was that. And it was just a really hard, there was a lot of anxiety because I couldn't figure out, all the time what was going on with my heart. And I was having all these inconsistencies with my body. And it was something that I had never had to deal with before. And it was a really heavy burden to think that something you had spent your whole life doing was just gone with a snap of a finger, just over. And so there was a lot of depression and self-medication, medicating that went on in that time period, right after high school for, 3 to 4 years of just really being depressed and in a dark spot. And that led to gaining weight. And just kind of realizing that drinking and drugs and things of that nature were causing even more issues. And so then it shifted to food, and so these addictions kind of took hold of like replacing that big hole that was made from your passion being completely taken away. But it's always funny how there's always when we hit these obstacles, it seems like it creates these new scenarios that are laid out for you. And music and poetry and painting became the things that I used to heal, the creativity. And those things began to really help heal me. But it wasn't until I started getting into music much later, with learning about getting into the ascended masters, sacred geometry, and then getting into sacred sound and like sacred frequency. That was like the game changer for me, was when I put on my first set of headphones with binaural beats. And that was the game changer. I was never a person that could sit still. My mind was always going. I was always focusing on what I needed to do, what I needed to get done. I was not a relaxed person, at all. And so when I put on those headphones, it created a space that I had never experienced before and allowed me to be at peace. And I remember having a conversation with my mother one time on the phone shortly after, where I said, this is the first time in my life that I've ever experienced peace in any way. I really forgot about time. I was in a different dimension, with those headphones on. I had lost track of time. I lost track of all sense of environment. And I really felt this outer body experience. And when I came back, I felt so refreshed and so at peace that I was in tears just with the release work from that one session. And so I started diving in deeper, learning more about breath work and intention setting, and then pairing that with the music. And as I got deeper into that process, I realized that as a musician, I felt like a lot of the frequencies were very powerful, but I wanted to do things that were more artsy and different with the music than what I had, heard in the options available on a lot of the YouTubes back then. And so I just started really experimenting and learning as much as I could, reading books, diving in, talking to sound healers and holistic practitioners. And it's really what gave birth to a miraculous healing for me. I was severely overweight. I was about 315, 317 pounds when I got diagnosed with MS and colon cancer, and had just severe battles with dyslexia and the kind of traditional learning model. And so when I started using the headphones consistently, like every day, about 20 minutes to 30 minutes each day, just that consistency, I started noticing that I was able to read more. My brain could focus more to sit down and read a book. And not only with my dyslexia, I was retaining the information, which is very hard for someone with dyslexia to read a book and retain that information on the first read. A lot of times I would read a page like 6 times to let it sink in. And I was finding that I was skimming books and was able to retain the information and have intelligent conversations with people about the books. And my family that knew the struggles would say, you're talking faster, you seem smarter, I don't know what's going on. And I was like, it's the frequencies, man. It's like really bringing a change, and I can feel it physically, but I'm also seeing it emotionally, and even diving deeper into more spiritual awakening. And so it was just a game changer. It was life changing. And within about a year and a half of doing that, I'd lost about 120, 130 pounds. And just people started seeing the physical changes, and then they started seeing the more emotional and just mood enhancement that was taking place. And they were saying, hey, I want to try this, and that's really where listening to Smile came from, was because the necessity of so many people seeing that change in me and saying, what are you doing? And, me saying, well, let's try some of this, see what you think about it, so it
Wow.
was a powerful experience.
So you had mentioned, just so we get a sense of the timeline. So late high school when you were being scouted, and then that just abruptly ended. So then what was the timeline in terms of how much time it took from that to going through your depression and all the other health issues to then starting to experiment with the music?
So there's a big time period in there. So basically high school, and then the next 3 to 4 years was just dark times, depression, and self-medicating. And then there was kind of pulling myself out of that and getting into through music and painting and poetry and things of that nature. I found Khalil Gibran, The Prophet, that book, and then that led into Rumi and Hafiz, or Hafiz, however you want to pronounce it. But those poets, the Sufi poets, really just it was like another game changer, where it was like reading that poetry was so healing, and I felt such a connection to the words in those books. And that really, led to getting into more creative arts, painting, and starting to write my own poetry. And I feel like that creativity was so nurturing and healing, to have that release and process through some of the trauma that I created for myself through that self-medicating, and just, bad decisions, being young and being heartbroken, losing your passion. And so, you fast forward just a little bit. I think I was 24 when I started Homemade Genius. So it's a nonprofit that I ran for almost 9 years. And the nonprofit was working with underserved kids with music and art lessons. And we were working in the community, creating art and music shows, and bringing international and national touring acts into our small town of Greenwood, South Carolina, a very small town. I think, it's not super small, but it's probably like 45,000 people or something like that. And so it was just something that, through that is where I really saw the kids who came through that program changed through music. And so as a musician, music is healing, and music therapy, and just in general, listening to music can change and facilitate new moods by the lyrics or the tempo or the mood of the music. You can help someone, like I always tell people, if you listen to Bob Marley, at some point everything's going to be all right, because it's just like, you can't listen to that and not be happy. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that was the first instance where I saw, okay, there's something deeper here than just entertainment. There is something that is connecting with these kids on a level, and having this life-changing, transformation with their grades, with their personalities. You're seeing them interact, and they're smiling more. And so that was really the beginning of listening to Smile. I just didn't know it. That was like, I think 2004, 2003, something like that. And so through that program, at the end, when we finished it, there was so many parents who came up to us and said, our kid was lost, was really trying to find an identity and find a group to hang out with. And they found a home at Homemade Genius. And, they're going to college, they're going to Clemson, they're going, and they were saying that, I didn't know if my kid was going to go make it through high school, or, even go to college. And now they're, been accepted, and they've got a scholarship, and they found, friends in this community that you created. And this was very powerful. And so, it was probably another 3 years after that when I got diagnosed. After the nonprofit was, done, I moved to Charleston. I got a job as a consultant for another nonprofit, and then about 6 months in, that nonprofit, lost its funding and wasn't able to continue forward. And about 2 days after that, I had my wisdom teeth pulled, and then I got Bell's palsy. Had all these health complications after they pulled my wisdom teeth. And then I went to the doctor, and they started doing all these tests, and they were saying, it's just, you're getting all kinds of like autoimmune responses, you're having all kinds of digestion issues, you're having, it's just tons of things that started happening. And I think it was the stress of making that move, and then losing that job, and then finding like, well, what do I do now? You know what I mean? And it was just this spot of, like, some people I think would call it like a dark night of the soul, where I lost pretty much everything. And within another 2 weeks, was basically finding myself in a really tight position. Lots of medical bills, thousands and thousands of dollars of medical bills. I was a musician, no insurance. And it was just not a good spot to be in. So I ended up selling most of my music equipment, sold my car, a bunch of other things, paid off the bills that I had, and then basically started from scratch. And I remember sitting in my apartment, and knowing that I was going to be evicted within the next few weeks. And I remember sitting on the bed and having this conversation with God. I said, okay, you got my attention. It's like like everything was taken away completely. And I think that I would have kept pushing on that nonprofit path if that would not have happened. And I think that just was a attention grab to say we're going to make a shift here, and timeline shift. It's like it would have been in a movie, like the narrator would have came in, okay guys, it's a timeline shift, we're going to scoot over to this next scene. And so it was very hard, something that you had worked on again for 11 years at that point, and or some 10 years, and had to give that up and move into something new. And I think that I always laugh and say that whatever I did before I came here, I could imagine sitting there with someone, they say, well, you're going to live 3 or 4 lifetimes on this trip, and it's going to be tough. And I was like, I can handle it. I'm a Leo, so I'm always like cocky and arrogant. I can do this. Let's do it. Let's go, And so, but yeah, so making that transition into listening to Smile, was very hard, because it was something that I had never done before, trying to not only help other people through music, but to make a living doing music. And I remember still to this day, telling my parents what I was doing, telling, my friends, and they would say, I don't know, man, it's tough in music. And I was like, I can do it. Let's do this. Let's make this happen. And so it's definitely been very trying. But the thing that's so interesting about it is that the whole process of how the thing has evolved has just been so organic. Like there's so many things that arise that is brought to the door, from from God, from the universe, however you want to look at it, where it's completely, not in the plan, and you see it, it comes in and it presents itself, like very much like our affiliate program, right? I'll just take this and break it down real quick. So I was going around and doing these events with sound at yoga studios, people's living rooms, wellness centers. And these people started contacting me from like Australia, Scotland, Ireland, China. I love your music. I love the lights and the environments at your shows. And, we want to use your music over here at events that we're having. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an affiliate program. And people were like, you don't have anything where I can like buy this and use it at like a license to use it? I was like, no, just making music, just that's what we're doing, and then it was like God, just like, hey man, I'm trying to help you out here, I'm trying I'm trying to give you, some income, and you can help some other people. And so I finally caught on, and I was like, all right, let's give this a shot. And I sat down, and it was a lot of work creating a licensing program, had to get a lawyer involved and learn a little bit more about that process. But every step of the way has been like this, you're in a dark situation, and then the flashlight comes on. It's like, over here, we're over here, let's get. And so it's just been such a follow the bouncing ball, and just a process of learning to be in the present moment. And I was never that kind of person where I was just always planning everything and kind of like had goals, in mind, checking them off. And I think that God just put me in a whirlpool on a surfboard and just constant change, and was like, we're going to figure out how to live in the present moment. And I think that it's been an exercise for the last 5 years of letting go to what my thoughts and feelings, or judgments, or preconceived notions of the way it should look. And I think that coronavirus, for everyone in this last year and a half here, has been the same process of, you're not going to know what the future is. I mean, in the next 3 months, it could completely change again, right? So like people are they're forced to live in the present moment. And I think that that's what this whole journey for me has been. I think a lot of healers that I talked to recently have been saying very similar stories with themselves as well.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that, Ian. It's powerful stuff. And I'm sure at this point, people's interest is piqued a bit and they want to hear some of the music. So we're going to play just a sample of one of the clips. This is called the Bhakti Beat Mantra. So I'm going to go ahead and just share this, and we'll listen to about 1.5 minutes of this. We'll come back to the discussion. All right, that was called Bhakti Beat Mantra. So Ian, tell us a little bit about that piece and like how you compose it and the healing elements that are in it, because this is where like people I'm surely are interested in like what is it about the sound that helps you feel better, that can facilitate healing.
Yeah. So the first thing that we do with almost 95% of the music that we're doing is what I call a tritone. So it's basically we're using a carrier frequency, a binaural beat as a carrier frequency, and then we have like left and right. You have two different, if you know what a binaural beat is, you have a left headphones with like 100 hertz and the right headphones with like 104 hertz, and the difference being that 4 hertz difference. And so the binaural beat creates the brain to actually hear that 4 hertz. And so what we're doing is with that binaural beat, we're then putting a mono beat or a what you would call like a pure tone, just a frequency note in the center, like what you would like the third eye and the spatial mixing of the headphones, so that you have a tone in the left, tone in the right, and then a tone in the center. And so what I always tell people frequency is the great disruptor. And what I mean by that is like with my dyslexia and a lot of learning disabilities, and then also just anxiety and things of that nature, you find that it helps the brain step down. So we're targeting a theta pattern, brainwave pattern, in almost all of our music. We really love theta. We think it's a really great, and a lot of hypnotherapists love theta because it's a really highly programmable state. And so with that, then we put the music and the instruments in tune to whatever note or frequency that we're working with to create the music for the entertainment value, for the engagement of the listener. But the whole time, the thing that's different is that they're getting that frequency. It's either on a subliminal or sometimes on some of the tracks, it's very loud where you can hear the tones. And so it's there from consistently from beginning to end of the song. And so a lot of people that put on headphones with the music will say, your music sounds so full. Like it just sounds very powerful, like different than what I hear on the radio. And that's why, is because we have those underlying frequencies and we're using a binaural beat with the mono beat and then the music on top of that. And so it's just a very powerful experience, especially with headphones. And so that's kind of the base of everything that we work with. Bhakti Beat Mantra is it's very interesting because listening to Smile, Dana is the co-founder. She's my life partner, but also in the business, she's the partner as well. And when I was doing yoga music before, she's a yoga instructor, breath work, and does a lot of our meditations. And she came in and she was like, your yoga music is awesome, but there's not the right flow. And I said, what do you mean not the right flow? And she's like, well, there's yin yoga, there's flow yoga. She's going through and she's really into Kundalini and Bhakti. And when she brought Bhakti to me and started explaining Bhakti, there was just this immediate connection with the philosophy and kind of the perspective of what Bhakti was comparative to traditional yogas that I had been exposed to. And so I really just felt a kinship, with that philosophy, and it just really challenged me and challenged her. And I've watched, as we've been diving deeper into study with it, it just really has helped us grow, and also with release work and kind of perspective of the way that we see each other and the world. And so I wanted to make a song that was like something that had a little mystery to it, and something that was a little more joyful and celebratory than like a meditation track would be. And so as soon as I started playing the drums and got that vibe, it just reminded me of I'm trying to remember the 80s band. It's just like has that kind of vibe to it. And so PM Dawn, that's what it was. PM Dawn, that the drum beat in that song that you just played remind me a lot of those vibes from that band in the 80s, or 90s, I guess. And so it just really, the whole song just, I think it took me like maybe 30 minutes to start tracking out that song. It was just like a straight download And so, Dana and I were listening, and I said, "This is Bhakti beat mantra." And so, she was just like, and I said, "It's just got that vibe to it." And so and that's a lot of the process is where we look at the astrology information for the month, and we look at the current events that are happening in the world, and we put together albums each month for the collective. And it's so, we try to have one or two upbeat tracks, and then it just starts downshifting as the track listing goes on to a more meditative and very relaxed state. So we're kind of meeting people when they come in off the street at these events, or even at home, they come home from work, and it's like they can do a little light flow yoga, a little ecstatic dance, and then sit down and do some breath work and tension setting, and then really dive into like a sound bath type of experience. And we just feel like it's a very hypnotic, transformative process, and doing it that way, it's a little different, than just diving right into meditation.
Mhm. Yeah. So, so then that leads me to the question, because you called your music frequency-minded music,
Yes.
and there's other music out there that's called sound healing or sound therapeutic music. So, how does frequency-minded music differ from other sound therapies?
Yeah, so I feel like what really separates it is that most traditional, like binaural beats and meditation music and sound healing, is very relaxed music. You'll get kind of like things that sound new agey and like Enya and things like that. And then you'll have like the more minimalistic, like singing bowl or a gong or a didgeridoo, and kind of traditional sound healing instruments. But I feel like for me, what I was finding when I was using those instruments is they're very beautiful and they're amazing. They're very powerful. But I was seeing that the people coming to the events, they were changing over like every 2 to 3 times. They would stop coming. And so some of my friends were the people that stopped coming, and I would ask them like, are you not feeling the vibe? What is it that, where is the disconnect? Where is it 2 or 3 events and then you're kind of focusing out? And so I started getting feedback from people like, I think it's beautiful, but after you've come to like see a singing bowl 2 or 3 times, it's just kind of boring. Like, what it is, it's the same note, the same frequency, and it's pretty, but it's like, it's boring. And so um, I really started getting a lot of feedback from people. And I said, what if we started incorporating like beat machines, keyboards, traditional, rock instruments, drums, guitar, bass, and vocals, and creating some really, and then they were like, yeah, and I think I would come more if there was more diversity. And so I started, it's really interesting. You get feedback like that, and you start going down that path and saying, this sounds like a good idea. Let's do this. But when we first started introducing it at yoga studios, people, when we played stuff like Bhakti Beat Mantra, the yoga studios would say, well, this isn't meditation music. And I started laughing, and I was like, you're right, it's not meditation music. And so, and so it was very trying. Like the first 6 months of doing this, like there was just so much resistance to bringing in these upbeat songs and saying, well, they're frequency, but like instead of doing meditation to this or closing your eyes, why don't we try some ecstatic dance? Why don't we move a little bit? Why don't we do some light flow yoga and things like that? And so that's what I think really separates us, is that we're doing things in like trip hop, hip hop, rock, post rock, folk music, and all these different styles of music with the frequency music. And we're also at the same time doing sound bath and meditation music as well. And we're combining all of these genres, but the underlying thread and theme is that they're all based on frequency and targeting a certain intention or focus with the music. It's not just creating a track and saying, I always compare it to like going to an art gallery. There's two artists there, and their paintings, they're standing in front of their paintings, and you go up to the first guy, and you say, hey, what created this piece of art? And he says, well, I just threw a bunch of paint on there. It looks pretty cool, right? And you're like, yeah, it looks cool. But then you go to the second guy, and he says, well, I started with this base, color tone, and then I started, adding to it, and it's based off of sacred geometry, and this is why this pattern looks this way, is the mathematical breakdown. And he starts explaining the science of why he painted that way. And I feel like when people see something that's in a template like that, and there's an explanation that draws them in, it's almost like watching like a VH1 storytellers or behind the music, where people start learning more about behind the curtain, and they start diving deeper into it, getting more excited about it, and learning a little bit more. And so I think it helps a lot. So yeah, so I think it just really draws people into exploring deeper, and getting a little like behind the curtain, just like that. So
Yeah. Let's only tie this because you mentioned the word science, and earlier you talked about the way that that it's configured is that there's an effect on the theta brainwave,
mhm.
which, so could you tell us what that is? Because I don't think everybody may realize what those different brain states are.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then the science of the frequency in terms of like what how it affects different parts of the body, or and what is the result that's being um, produced.
Okay. Yeah, so a theta state, brainwave state, is the state that we go into just before REM sleep. So it's a very relaxed state. It's very, a lot of people will say they almost feel like they're in between a waking state and a dream state when they're in a theta pattern. And so the reason that I love that is, for me, I just found it to be such a place of release for me personally. But I also know that it's a really great spot to be in whenever you're creating an intention or a focus, like with your meditation. Like, let's say, I'm going to go into meditation to manifest. I want to create, a new job scenario. I want to get out of the job I'm in. I'm looking for a new job. I'm being open. And a lot of books like Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. There's parts in the book where she'll say to be thankful for the job that you have, and say, like, I needed this job and it came at the time when I really needed it, but I've outgrown this job, and I'm thankful for this job, but I'm going to release this job and know that someone else who needs it right now is going to get this job. And just as I need a change and I need something different, more pay or more excitement, I'm going to find that again. And by setting those meditations, those thoughts, and combining it with theta pattern, with like the binaural beats and the music, I feel like it's just highly effective at reprogramming the subconscious, where it's basically helping you to gain a new perspective and create new neural pathways in that state. And another, we have testimonials from people who actually have gone to a dentist and had a dental procedure done, like a cavity filled, and she just listened to our theta pattern music when she was, uh, undergoing the process, and she refused to have Novocaine. And the dentist was so impressed that she went through the whole procedure that he called us, and said, "What's up with this music? How are you doing this?" And so what I was explaining to him is, I said, it's very hard to get testing done on this because it's not a pill that companies can make money on, and they're not musicians, so they don't care if the music works or not, right? And it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to get testing like that done. But I said, here's my suspicion. My suspicion is, when you drop a person into a theta pattern that would normally be in your chair in an anxious state, but which would be a completely different brainwave state, the sedatives that you're giving them are burned off quicker, because the blood is circulating more, and there's more excitement, there's more adrenaline and cortisol being created in the body, and you're burning through these things, which is why they do such a high dose of Novocaine. Like, they'll put the whole syringe in people's mouths when they're going in for, like, oral surgery. But I was telling him the why she was able to do that, in my opinion, was that basically you dropped her into a theta pattern and her body was completely relaxed, during the process. And she was kind of in that between the waking and the dream state. And it would almost be like, giving her a sedative. And so I said, I really believe, even if you used a sedative with someone that had theta pattern, playing for the consistency of the duration of the event, that you would have to use less, and it would last a longer period of time, because the body's not producing these stress hormones and have that stress response as much as it would if it was just, stuck in the moment of focusing on the drill sound and, all those different things that go on. So basically, the theta pattern is just, for me, a very healing state, a brainwave state, and the music helps facilitate that. With meditation, a lot of the meditation gurus will talk about the hemispheres, In the 70s, there was lots of research done, and the Monroe Institute and a lot of other places were talking about hemisync, if you know about hemisync technology. And so it's where the two hemispheres sync, and the achievement of doing that through meditation might take 10, 15 years of meditating consistently and creating a practice to be able to master your chemical and brainwave states. And now they know, we know, like with Dr. Bruce Lipton with epigenetics, they know that this is real, through clinical trials where they've studied individuals, and then also stem cells where they've shown that the environment really dictates how the cells react. It's not a genetic it's not our genetics, but that it's actually literally the chemicals that we're producing from thoughts that create emotions, and those emotions create chemical responses, and then the body reacts accordingly to those chemical responses. So I think, like, this is the same thing. If you can help someone to relax and help them at the same time change their perspective or focus, that's what this music is good for. It's just a tool that aids in that transition to the next state, like the perspective of how we're looking at things.
Yeah, got it. Well, and so we are a little bit later on. I'm going to facilitate a meditation with one of the tracks, and bring people maybe into that state. We'll see what happens, or you'll experience it yourself. In the meantime, let me play a sample from another track
Okay.
called "Our False Limits." So let me cue this up. And here we go. Okay, so that's a track called "Our False Limits." So both of those that we just played are from, I think the album's called "Dynamic Vibes for the Restless Mind." Did I have
Yeah,
that right?
movement meditation. Yeah, movement
Yeah,
meditation,
yeah.
volume 1. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you admit, so tell us a little bit, like, how, because you mentioned like that you are producing albums for very specifically in alignment, like with astrological conditions and so forth.
Yeah. So well, that track that you just played is 390.6 hertz. And so that's one that we discovered through experimentation, and found that 390.6 was just such a soothing frequency on its own, just as a pure tone. And I started meditating with that track, and I just said, there's something with this frequency. And I started sharing it with friends. And as soon as they would put it on, they would just be falling asleep, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes in, and I started making music with it and started sharing it with family and friends. And every track that I would share in that frequency, people would say, "Man, this is just so peaceful and so, you know." And so then this Our False Limits was the first track that I did with 390.6 outside of the meditation tracks. And so everyone would say, well, it's got a groove to it, but it's still just like very, I still get a sense of peace when I'm listening to it. And so when we started working with the meditation tracks with people, what was really interesting is every single person that filled out our survey from using 390.6, the meditation tracks, uh, it had peace in it. They would say, "This is the most peaceful track I've heard," and it was Belief Code 21. I think you might have that track too. I'm not sure. And then, you know, a lot of people just started writing and writing about how peaceful it was, and it was just in the titles and filling out the survey. And it was over 3 years, we did 1,500 people, and every single person, like not an exaggeration, every single person either said, "This is the most peaceful frequency," or "I felt such peace," and it was just peace, 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 peace. And so Dana and I said, "This is it. We're going to dub this the frequency of peace." And so we just created a listening to smile frequency and started sharing it with people. And it's just been really positive, the response from that frequency. I just feel like it's a very peaceful, you know, frequency. So that's the frequency in Our False Limits.
Got it. Yeah. Um, there's, let me ask you about, because when you talk about your music, you talk about the chakra frequencies, planetary frequencies, Schumann resonances, and if I pronounce it right, the solfeggio frequencies.
Yeah. Mhm.
So can you explain just what those are and why they're so important in your music?
Yeah. So this is the conspiracy, right? Is that A equals 440, and everyone's seen it, I'm sure, on Facebook and YouTube and, you know, everything else. People are constantly asking us, is 440 really bad for us? And so you have to kind of get to the history. And this is, you know, interesting. People can, you know, look into it if they want. But if you look at World War II, there was a operation by the government called Operation Paperclip. And it's where we basically stole all the scientists from Nazi Germany and in Russia and all these different places, started pulling people to the United States to work on the space program. And in that, there was kind of a just a like a theft of the, you know, these brilliant minds to come over and work for the United States. But in that, when they came over to work, there was a lot of background checks and, you know, going into learning more about the work that they were doing. And what they found was that the scientists had been working on sound and lots of other R&D, research and development, with Nazis, you know, and the war machine that was going on. And so one of the things that was really interesting is that the Rockefeller Foundation and the Ford Foundation started really looking at how fast the Nazi Party rose to power and how transformative it was for the entire country, kind of the propaganda and the brainwashing that went on to achieve that level of success of the takeover that took place. And what was interesting is they said, you know, we want to do the same thing here in the States. We want to create docile follower workers for the Industrial Revolution, for everything that's going on with the assembly lines and the factories that were, you know, popping up everywhere and just taking, you know, taking off. And so they started really working on the educational system. And basically what we know as the educational system today was really formed by those, you know, organizations, the Rockefeller Foundation and the Ford Foundation. And so they implemented music into schools. They pushed for the standardized tuning of A equals 440. And what's really interesting is about it is you get into where people are studying the resonant frequencies and distant frequencies. And so they were saying that A equals 440 was creating like a stunted growth for plant cells and human tissue cells when they were experimenting with this music. But the Nazi scientists, they had come up with a term for it. I think they called it the devil's interval of A equals 440. And they were saying that they felt like that you could subdue people through that frequency of music. And then it was pushed, you know, on all levels on so many different fronts. And so there's a book where you can look up some of this information where they pulled, you know, some of the paper trails and kind of show some of the evidence in the book, but it's called The Book of 528 by Dr. Lynn Horowitz. And it's a really interesting book. So he gets into all of the kind of brainwashing and things that has taken on, and people can get into that or not get into that. But me personally, I try not to focus on that too heavily. What I really focus on is how does it make me feel? And so there's still music that I like. Like I love John Prine, I love James Taylor and the Beatles. You know, I love Miles Davis and John Coltrane and all of the, you know, music that I grew up on, the Beatles and, you know, stuff like that, right? Frank Zappa, I really like Frank Zappa, you know, so it's like, you know, I still listen to that music, but when I listen to frequency music, I feel completely different. It's a different, it's almost, for me, I feel like the other stuff is like the ice cream and all these amazing, you know, things with the music. But when I sit down with the frequency, it's like when I eat healthy food and I've done it for like a week and I'm eating that healthy food, my body responds differently and I feel different. And that's what I really feel like. I tell people, listen to some mainstream music and then listen to some of the frequency that we're doing and listen to even other people who are doing like singing bowls and things of that nature and spend some time with it, and you will see for yourself that you're going to feel different listening to this music and the way that it's engaging you with the constant tones is very different. So the frequencies that you're talking about are like baselines. It's something where it gives you a starting point. And you know, there's different schools of thought that have brought them forward to the mainstream. Like the planetary frequencies really goes back to Pythagoras. Pythagoras really believed, you know, kind of like the godfather of music and mathematics, and he believed that you could take the measurements of an object and create the frequency for any object based off of the measurements. And so there was a mathematician back in the 70s that put together the planetary frequencies, where he was using Pythagoras's kind of notion and theory, and started getting into the orbital patterns and the circumference of the planets and started creating frequency for those specific planets. And so people started really working with those in the spiritual community, sound healing community. And then the person that really put all of this on the map would be Royal Raymond Rife, if you've heard of like the Rife machines. And so he's the one that really started showing how sound could actually destroy like the outer membrane of like cancer cells or viruses and things of that nature. And so he found it by accident. He was looking at frequencies that would resonate and show, like he was switching through a color spectrum when he was studying like I think it was a virus, the first thing. And so he was noticing when he was changing through the colors that the whole cell, you know, everything lit up. And you know, the test subject that he was looking at, everything lit up when he hit a certain frequency. So he started saying, well, if everything, you know, doesn't work except, okay, now we found the resonant frequency of this, and the whole, you know, shebang just lit up. And so he said that, you know, I found the resonant frequency for the light. There has to be a sound resonance as well. And when he started experimenting, he hit the resonant frequency and it destroyed the outer membrane of the you know, the cell. And so he was like, okay, so you could actually cure something or you know, destroy a cancer cell, destroy a virus, you know, with sound, and it doesn't hurt any of the tissue surrounding it. And so he started really, and he developed the Rife machine and microscopes and all kinds of just amazing things. And so his work is really what a lot of this is built on, you know, where basically you can get down to every organ has a frequency. You know, cells have a frequency. You know, he was showing everything from bone tissue to, you know, muscle tissue to, you know, he was a pioneer where he just really documented everything that he was, you know, experimenting with and studying. And he has thousands and thousands of frequencies, you know, for the human body. So, you know, his work, you got the mathematician with the planetaries, and then the Schumann resonance was actually a scientist who showed that Earth had an magnetic pulse, 7.83 hertz, and they called it the Schumann resonance, and it was basically the heartbeat of the earth. But what they've shown over the last 5 years here is that it's spiking off the charts somewhere that it's never gone, like 16, 44, 100 hertz and more. And a lot of people believe that the earth fluctuating its frequency so high is that it's almost, a lot of the people will, channels and intuitives on earth, empaths, are saying, this is earth up leveling and forcing us to up level. And it's really interesting because the time that it's been peaking that high, you're starting to see the evolution of the awakening happening on the planet, and it was about like I think it was 2010 and 11 and 12 where it started really changing. And then you start looking at how people are really looking at their diets and things of that nature now, and it's kind of irrefutable evidence that that's what's taking place. So basically these are all frequencies that are just baseline starting points to start with someone, working with sound healing and frequency, sacred frequency.
Okay. And then, so let me tie this back to, you said when you had MS and colon cancer,
Mhm.
did you have this depth of knowledge about the frequencies at that point, or were
No,
you?
yeah, I had got into frequency music about 2 years before I got sick, but I was just listening to other people's stuff and kind of like on the surface, not really. So what it really happened was when I got diagnosed with that, it was very heavy news. I felt very depressed and scared, and I didn't have money to do the treatments that they wanted to do. Like, just even do one of the tests that we did was like $4,500 just for like a 20-minute test. It was just ridiculous. And so they shot me full of radioactive dye, put me in the machine, and then I got a bill. I was like, what in the world? Like, are you? I was like, wow. So the treatments that they wanted to do were just a lot of money. And so I remember going home, and I actually that night started reading The Healing Power of Sound by Dr. Mitchell Gaynor and Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. Both of those books were started simultaneously, and I just found such links and power in their knowledge that was being bestowed. And I just from that point forward just started really diving deep and just looking at more holistic based alternatives to what was going on. And I knew that I had to start with my mind. I knew that if I didn't believe that I could get better or heal myself, that it didn't matter what path I chose, it just wasn't going to work. I knew enough to know that. And I think that was the good starting point. And when I started working with frequency, I knew the headphones made me feel good, but I wanted more power. It was kind of like Johnny Number Five, like more input, more power, It's like, so that movie was always kind of in my head as a joke and kept me smiling and laughing because I was really enjoying what I was reading, the literature and all of the information I was taking in, and I just wanted more and more and more. So it led to me taking a massage table, and I deconstructed the guts part, and I built speakers underneath in the configuration of the tree of life. So then what I did was I worked on the mixing system where I could play different frequencies to each speaker, and then I laid on the bed, and I would lay on the bed for 2 hours, and then it turned into sleeping on the bed overnight. And I would just play frequency into my body at all times. And there's sometimes where I would play it so long that I would get up and I would still feel my chest like vibrating, like just like an intense feeling. And it was so powerful. I feel like that honestly is what feeling that was almost like a placebo, where I believed that it was working and I felt it working in my body. But it was just the combination of the intention, the belief, and the actual frequency, which I attribute to the disruption of the normal processes in the body, or those learned patterns of illness or disease, or even the thought patterns that go along with it. Like when someone tells you you have MS, this is not good, you have colon cancer, and so it's basically like I said, frequency is the great disruptor. And I feel like if you can disrupt what's going on, and then create a new focus and new vocabulary and new intention, you're already halfway there on that battle. The last thing I'll say on that is I always tell people, like, as a visual tool, if you had a gardener that put all of his tools in the back of his pickup truck and he's driving down the road, and then he was kind of getting some speed and hit a pothole, and then we just took a snapshot of that when all the tools kind of come up out of the bed of the truck, and when we take a like matrix style frame shot, and we kind of rotate around it and show all the tools. And I said, now I want you to envision those tools as being negative attachments, negative thought patterns, negative environmental impact, emotional traumas. That's what all these tools are. Your body is the truck. The vibration is what creates the separation. And then it's up to you to do the release work and not recycle that back in, but to release it. And that is done through intention, focus, and your vocabulary of how you talk to yourself every day. And I think that the music is the tool that helps you achieve that separation when it's hard for you to do it for yourself.
Wow. Yeah, that's profound, and that's a really great illustration. I definitely picture that. And if you've got a question for Ian or a comment, please put it in the chat or raise your hand. I want to circle back on something because you talked about the power of your intention with all of this, and you have to, if I remember right, you and I had a conversation this months ago. And I think you mentioned to me that like your mom had experienced healing through the music. Is that right? Am I
Yeah.
remembering that right? Okay. So, and she is not, if I remember right as well, not a trained musician, and she's not necessarily, she's on a different religious or spiritual path than you.
Yeah.
Right. So that maybe the intention that she had wasn't the same, of the same spirit as yours, for lack of a better way to put it. So but can you tell us a story of your mom's experience with the music?
Yeah. So my mom's really, I was raised Christian. My mom, when I was younger, I always joke and say she's kind of like a fundamentalist in so many ways. But now she's more open and has grown a lot, and she's really into like Joyce Meyer and Joel Osteen and all those guys. And there's really interesting conversations that go on between us, because like I was talking to her about the Nag Hammadi texts and like the Dead Sea Scrolls and things of that nature, and like getting into these kind of far out scenarios, and like 10 years ago that conversation never would have taken place. So we're definitely kind of at different perspectives, but there's also a respect of like of each other's thoughts and feelings about our belief systems. And so there is that respect for that, but it is very different, just with that being said. And so I got a call from my mom, and she was saying that I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. This was in 2016, 2017. And that they found it in her lymph nodes, and it was also in her thyroid, and it was pretty severe, that they had to take the thyroid out immediately. So she had the surgery for the thyroid, but they wanted to go in and take her lymph nodes and both of her breasts. And she was having a really hard time with it. It was very major surgery. They were going to have to do an open heart surgery, at the first one to get the thyroid, and there was another tumor just, below, like around the sternum, and they were going to have to open heart surgery and take that. And so they did that, and it was such a long battle for her to recover, and they wanted to go back in and do the lymph nodes in the breast. And she said, I can't do it. And she said, I've lived a good life if this is what it is, but I just can't go through another one of those surgeries like that. And so she said, could you help me? Do you think I can do this without doing that treatment? And I said, well, Mom, I don't want to, you can't put that on me. Like, I can't tell you to like not do something and something go wrong. It'll make me. And I said, but how do you feel about it? Do you feel that you can beat this? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, well, if you believe that you can beat this, I'll believe that you can beat this too. And I said, us doing that together. And I said, I do think there's some things that we could do that will help. And I said, you've grown up on hamburgers and hot dogs and a lot of these processed foods that are not aiding in where you're wanting to be. And I said, I also feel like that I don't think you realize how much, because I came from her, you know what I'm saying? So I knew, like, the way that my mind was so busy, that came from somewhere, right? So I was telling her, like, you're always moving, you have a hard time sleeping, you're always thinking and planning and doing stuff. And I said, I think you just have to chill. I think you have to relax and give space for self-care and give space for just releasing and letting go. And I think it's going to be a process, but if you're up for it, I'm up for it. And so I started, watching, like, she loved Heaven Can Wait. No, what's the guy from Little House on the Prairie? What was his
Oh, Michael Landon.
Michael Landon, and the Heaven show that he was in? What, do you know what I'm talking about?
It was a Highway to Heaven.
Highway to Heaven, that's what it was. So we
Okay.
started watching Highway to Heaven, and I took her to the doctor visits. I made her food, helped her get in and out of bed. She was having a very hard time there for a few months. It was really scary and trying, but I kept the faith and she kept the faith. And I bought her a singing bowl. We started working with the singing bowl on her body. We planted an organic garden in her backyard, and everything that she ate came from her backyard, and she was really excited about all of that. And we got her to stop eating meat and to make more plant-based choices. And I started teaching her how to cook foods that were like, I was like, this is kind of like a plant-based pizza. And she's like, I don't know about this. I was like, give it a little time. It'll be good. I promise. And so we got into just changing some of her favorite foods into more healthy options. And there was a lot of griping, there was a lot of griping, but about 3 weeks in, she said, you know what, I can feel the difference in how my body feels. And I think that was the catalyst and the placebo that kind of pushed her through to the other side. And she started listening to the music, and she was very opposed to the music at first. She didn't want to wear the headphones, but the first time she put on the headphones, she was out, and she slept for like 4 hours. And so she was like, man, I love this music, And so it was just like, I think it's just people being open to trying new things that might not be their traditional foundation. But I think, again, it was the great disruptor. It disrupted a lot of her thought processes and feelings and thoughts that were going on, and it helped her to settle in. So now she actually sleeps to albums, and she'll say, I need a new album, and I'll just send her another one. But she uses them to go to sleep. And I think that it's the times that she does that she realizes, like, because we all get busy, or we kind of get in our routines, and we'll get out of whatever it was, and then you come back to it and you're like, oh, that's why I was doing this. And so I think it definitely had an impact on her, and it also had an impact on me on how to work with people who were so shut down. It helped me to go deeper with my work, to try to learn in a more compassionate way how to help people that were more shut down to this option.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing it. That's really a beautiful story, and just really happy for your mom and what she experienced and all that. And like, as I'm hearing the story and hearing through the story,
It took about 9 months. It took about 9 months before she was cancer free, but it was about 9 months. It was a long process, but if you think about it, what she achieved, it wasn't really that long,
Yeah.
So she's completely cancer free now. They won't, the doctors won't say that. They'll say, well, it's not present now, but she's cancer free, and has been doing really great with everything.
Yeah, and what a lesson, right? Because I mean, it's the way that you gently worked with her, and as well, I mean, some people would call it pastoral, like you were being very pastoral with the way you were with her, and with using the music. And what the story says to me, like, one of the morals of the story that I get is that, like, one, just a little bit of openness can mean so much. And then two, that the frequencies are the frequencies. So even if the intent isn't 100%, the frequencies are,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to do their job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely some of the most powerful. Like for instance, I'll tell you this. So 528 hertz is definitely the one I used the most when I was losing all that weight. Because everyone will see like a video or like a little bit about my story, and they'll say, "Now, what frequency were you listening to when you lost all that weight?" It's like, so I was like, well, I was listening to 528, but I said if you're going to listen to 528 in the way that I was listening to it, I was listening to it like at one point about 6 hours in a day. I was listening to it when I would take a shower, when I would like after I would eat, I would listen to it before bed, when I got up in the morning. I was listening to it a long time, and I was crying constantly. Like I literally just had these tears and just pouring out. And my uncle, that guy, the guy I was telling you about, was friends with Drumvalo and all those guys. He was like, "You're listening to the same frequency too much." He's like, "Try some other ones. You'll filter some other stuff in there." And he was just like, "It's just really intense. It's like you're doing a yoga nidra with the same, word, like, same vowel sound over and over and over, and you're just hammering away." And he's like, what is your intention when you're listening to this? And I said, I just want to lose weight. I just feel so uncomfortable in my skin. And he's like, you've just, hammered and hammered and hammered. And he's like, now you just got to let it go. And so I took that advice. I stopped using 528 and I started experimenting in like some of the other frequencies. But 528 laid the groundwork for me in how much release work took place, and to kind of set up myself to actually stand back as an observer. Instead of being in the victimization mode. After that process, I really noticed that I was able to kind of sit back and look at things and observe things without taking it extremely personal or being upset with myself, or and just being more compassionate and more loving to myself. And I started seeing even more power move through that. But in that same time period, I noticed that I had a headache, like migraines. Like I would have dancing lights in my vision, and I would have just these throbbing headaches. And when I would use 528 hertz, and it sounds so you know absurd, that you would put, like when you're having a migraine, that you would put on headphones and listen to frequency music. It just doesn't, most people just want silence and darkness. But when I did it, within about 3 to 7 minutes, it would dissipate the dancing lights, and it would get rid of the throbbing and the headache. And I remember feeling the first time that happened, really sitting there and saying, wow, this really works. And I think that's what really helped me to dive in, even, just all in, just getting into it. It was because I started seeing these little things that were just, such obstacles in my days. But because when I would get a headache like that, it would just knock me out for the whole day. Like I would have to lay down. It would be 6 hours before it finally went away. And here I could put on the headphones, and within 3 to 7 minutes, it was gone. And so I think that it's just counteracting. It's like your vibration, and for your brainwave state, your heart rate, your anxiety, the stress hormones, are just kicking full, and then you turn on that frequency, and it's just like kind of lowering the level and changing the brain chemistry, changing the thoughts. Oh, this is working. And then you're starting to get different emotional reactions to it.
Mm, wow. Okay. Great. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate you explaining that. Just for everyone, just to keep in mind, I'm going to put this in the chat. There's a code called SC Smile, which is the code that if you're a follower of Social Chrysalis, actually you can get a 40% discount on listening to Smile music. And I'm going to use this as a segue. We're going to go into a 10-minute clip that I'm going to do a meditation over. It's called Exhalation of Feelings and Thoughts. And this is, Ian composed this, is designed for pain relief. This is one of the tracks on that particular album. So this starts out quiet. So I'm going to start it and you'll hear me facilitating the meditation, but then you'll start to hear the music come up. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you now. And then we'll come back and talk to Ian a little bit after that to close out the roundtable. So here we go. And invite everyone to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. Bring attention to your breathing. And as you begin to listen to the music, the sound, frequencies, open your whole being to receive. Gently following the natural rhythm of your breath. And as the music reverberates through your body, breathe in the intention of healing. Breathe in the intention of restoration. Breathe in the intention of renewal. Breathe in the intention of vitality. With each breath, feeling lighter, stronger, calmer. With each breath feeling more peaceful, centered, vibrant. And with each inhale, of course, there's an exhale. As you inhale all of these life affirmative, supportive, healing attributes. With each exhalation, you release that thing or those things that do not serve you. Each exhalation, releasing old patterns that don't work anymore. Each exhale, releasing attitudes that are not in divine order or of the highest service. Each exhale, releasing anything and everything that you cling to from your past that doesn't nurture you as you move forward in the future. Inhaling and exhaling. as the music continues to fill your body, just experience the power of the vibration. Touching every nerve, fiber, every cell, every bone, every muscle of your brilliant body. Feeling the flow of the life with which you've been endowed, coursing through your veins, filling you with joy and power. In this moment, claiming an abundance of restorative thought. Coupled with the power of this music, to fortify, sustain, and strengthen you, body, mind, and soul. Feeling the fullness of the life with which you've been blessed. Opening yourself completely to healing in whatever form it is designed to take for you in this moment. So let us meditate on health, healing, restoration, vitality, peace, as we continue to listen to the music for a few moments in the silence. Very gently begin to bring your awareness back fully to your embodied self, feeling yourself seated in the chair, becoming aware of the air circulating around you. Becoming aware of your breathing, the inhale and the exhale. And when you're ready, open your eyes and be here now. So that was Exhalation of Feelings and Thoughts, the track from listening to Smile, movement meditation. Or I'm sorry, was that right? No, this is, was that right, Ian? Did I have the right track?
So that one is off of the
Pain
for
relief,
pain relief. Yeah.
pain
And
relief.
that the 174 hertz is pain relief frequency from the solfeggio.
Yeah. Beautiful. Again, if there are any questions for Ian, we've got a few minutes left. Feel free to put those in the chat, or you can raise your hand. We'd be happy to bring you either on screen or just can give the question to Ian from the chat. Ian, just real quick, can you tell us, well, there is one question, so let me, and Robert, could you bring Barbara in for that?
Bringing her in.
Barbara Dorn-Drew. Who is one of our social chrysalis.
Just need to unmute her here then, and video.
Yeah, I was assuming Barbara wanted to come on video.
Yep, there you go.
There she is.
Hi. Ian, this is kind of amazing. Ian, can you hear me? See me?
Yes. Yes.
Good, now I can see you. So let me just, okay. We did that. Okay. You talked about this music helping in dentistry.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just had this series of dental work over the last, actually a few months, but in the last month, I've been in pain on my right and left upper and lower molars for probably 3 weeks, at least 3 weeks now, as a result of different dental work and stress I was going through. And I had just said to the dentist like 2 weeks ago when I was there, I said, well, you know, he'd said, oh, you're one of our best patients. And I said, well, I just meditate. I do this Tree of Life meditation that I actually did in last month's roundtable. It's based on the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. Yeah. And what I'm getting from you though, and this, I think it's a TMJ thing, you know, I can't seem to, and he keeps adjusting the bite, but it's not working. And I keep thinking, you know, I don't know if I had done some grinding, and I keep thinking, you know, is the tooth cracked, whatever, but he's putting a crown on and all this stuff. So anyway, when I was, Stephen, you did a beautiful, the two of you together is fabulous. You could put out CDs for the two of you. It's fabulous. And I was trying to let the music, you know, I thought, okay, the meditation I do is one thing, but it's not handling this problem. And I thought, okay, so with your music, do you recommend that I would breathe? I mean, like, would I lie down, put on the music? Do you have to have headphones? And then do I breathe out? I was trying to breathe into the pain. Mm-hmm. Is it a good thing to direct my healing energy and my healing thoughts into the pain? Or how do you recommend one would use this?
So I think that it really comes down to there's personal practices and belief structures around certain things. But me personally, I really feel that intention is one of the most powerful things that you can pair with pretty much anything. But with sound healing, it's just like, I always say that frequency is the great disruptor, but the fuel, the fuel would be something like intention, where it's just really, adding to the value of what you're getting from sound healing. It's kind of taking it to the next level. So one of the exercises that Dana and I do with our clients is that to visualize, pain. A lot of times, like, we are giving visuals as aids, in helping to do the release work. So you would be like listening to the music, you would breathe in, and in that breath, that deep breath, you're going to be focusing on a light source, whether you're pulling it down from above, through the crown, or a lot of times people want to connect with like earth energy. And you'll believe the visual will be through the feet, and bringing it up. But the exhale, I feel like, and the intention of that is where the power lies. And that's basically visualizing that pain as a thick black smoke that you're blowing out, almost like you know, were just releasing black smoke. And
Mhm.
you give the black smoke the visual and the intention of that pain leaving your body. So you're giving the brain a visual aid as well as
Okay.
the vibration to disrupt the pain and
Okay.
that focus on the pain. But
Mhm.
that disruption allows you to then sit back as an observer and then blow that pain, you know, as a visual aid out of your body. And we find it to be very effective with people that are dealing with pain management. And it's just something that headphones, yes, definitely will be a more powerful experience when you're using like brain entrainment with like binaural beats and those types of effects. But yeah, that's what I would highly suggest is that and we tell people, you know, about 15 to 20 minutes a day is a very, very powerful. And a lot of the testimonials we get when people do video testimonials and things and send them in to us, what they're saying in those testimonials is the more I work with it, the less I need. You know, it lasts a longer duration and I have to do it less frequent when I'm doing it more consistently. You know, like
Mhm.
So when they build up like maybe 2 weeks of that work, then they say, oh, instead of doing it, you know, 30 minutes every day, I can do it in 5 minutes a day, and I'm still finding the same effects through that consistency, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Um,
so this particular piece, Stephen, sorry, I had turned off all my lights and everything in here, but if I just want to make sure I got it correctly, because you said it was from a different, it's from the album Pain Relief. Is this what you would recommend? It was called something about exhalation and inhalation, but I didn't get it.
Yeah, that's the track name, the exhalation, and it's 174 hertz, which is it's a pain relief frequency from the solfeggio.
Okay.
And that's on the album um, for pain relief, and that's on if you go to the website listeningtosmile.com,
Okay.
then you can purchase. You go to the wellness series at the top. There's a menu like says go to the store, and when you go into the store, the wellness series is what you want, and that album is in the wellness series.
and I did
Okay.
put a link in the chat to the direct purchase page, which if you use and for Social Chrysalis, if you're a follower, use the code SC Smile for a 40% discount. This is the partnership that Ian has so generously offered us. So just want to make note of that. Thanks, Barbara. There's one more quick question that I want to ask before we end.
Thank you
That's
so
from
much, both of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have an amazing night. Thank you.
So this is from Gary. So Gary asks, what about people with Parkinson's? What frequency would you think would work best? And if you had any experience with people with Parkinson's disease?
Yes. So not tons of experience, but about 4 different people that have come through in the last like 3 years who have asked for help. And what I find are the lower frequencies on the solfeggio scale. So you're talking 174, 285, and 396 hertz. And so 396 hertz is the root chakra. And 174 is the frequency for pain relief, and 285 it's a sacral chakra. There's a lot people use it in so many different ways, but 285 is a lot of massage therapists use it, and a lot of people that are doing like chakra balancing will use 285 as well in energy work and things of that nature. But for whatever reason, 174, 285, and 396 hertz I found to be very effective with Parkinson's. And again, it's also the intention of, you know, setting down and actually the same kind of visual aids that we were talking about with Barbara, helping the body to stabilize and to find stability and grounding, and having that intention while listening with headphones, I felt like was very powerful. And, you know, listening at a subtle volume, something that was manageable. And a lot of people with different pain management issues that are going on will find that sometimes they turn it up a little louder, sometimes they turn it down a little lower, just depending on where they are for that day, you know. what they can tolerate. So
So you had 174 hertz, 285. And what was the other one?
396.
I'm just going to put that in the chat. So
Okay.
396, just so you can reference it there. Well, Ian, so we're a little past time, so just want to honor everyone's time. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm really grateful to be connected with you. Ian and I started talking maybe several months ago, and then we just reconnected recently and with this partnership. So, I'm definitely grateful that the divine timing is such that you came back into my orbit now, and that we can offer not only this program tonight, but all of your music to followers of Social Chrysalis, especially at the generous discounts. So thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate you being here. And Ian, just look forward to continuing on this journey with you in partnerships. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun. It was really fun. It was fun doing the questions at the end too. That was awesome.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
great.
totally. I'd love to. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Till next time.